By September 1938, Europe appeared to be moving closer to war over the Sudetenland. The crisis ended with the Munich Conference and the Munich Agreement. However, although the agreement avoided war in the short term, it seriously weakened Czechoslovakia and encouraged Hitler to make further demands. In this video, we will examine what was agreed at Munich, why the agreement was important, and how Hitler later took control of the rest of Czechoslovakia. The Munich Conference took place on the 30th of November 1938. 4 major European powers were represented. Neville Chamberlain represented Britain, Adolf Hitler represented Germany, Benito Mussolini represented Italy, and Edouard Daladier represented France. However, no representatives from Czechoslovakia were invited, even though the future of their country was being decided. The Soviet Union was also excluded from the conference. At Munich, Britain, France, Germany, and Italy agreed that the Sudetenland would become part of Germany. Britain and France guaranteed the remaining part of Czechoslovakia. However, the Czechoslovak government was forced to accept the agreement. This meant that Hitler gained the Sudetenland without ever having to fight a war. After the Munich Conference, Chamberlain met Hitler privately. Hitler signed a declaration stating that Britain and Germany would never go to war against each other again. They also agreed that future disagreements between the two countries would be solved through consultation rather than through war. When Chamberlain returned to Britain on the 1st of October, he held this declaration in his hand. Many people believed that Chamberlain had successfully preserved peace. An article in the Times newspaper praised Chamberlain and presented him as a hero. However, not everyone supported the Munich Agreement. Winston Churchill strongly criticised the agreement. Speaking in Parliament on the 5th of October 1938, Churchill described the Munich Agreement as a complete defeat. He warned that Czechoslovakia might soon lose its independence and be taken over by Nazi Germany. Duff Cooper also strongly opposed the agreement. He resigned as the First Lord of the Admiralty in protest. Cooper argued that Britain should be prepared to fight to prevent one country from dominating Europe through force. These critics believed that the Munich Agreement had not created a lasting peace. Instead, they believed it had made Hitler stronger. The Munich Agreement had 2 important consequences. First, it made Germany stronger. Hitler gained the Sudetenland without fighting. Germany also gained the Sudetenland's armaments and mineral resources. Second, while making Germany stronger, it weakened Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia had lost its defensive frontier. This made the remaining country much more vulnerable to invasion. Czechoslovakia lost 70% of its heavy industry, so producing equipment like tanks and guns was much harder. Czechoslovakia had also been betrayed. Decisions about its territory had been made without its representatives being present. Chamberlain had maintained peace in the short term, but strengthened Germany while weakening Czechoslovakia. Therefore, although the Munich Agreement avoided an immediate war, it greatly strengthened Germany and weakened Czechoslovakia. Britain responded by speeding up its programme of rearmament. After the Munich Agreement, Czechoslovakia became increasingly weak. In 1939, encouraged by Hitler, the Slovaks began demanding independence. Then, in March 1939, the Czech president was forced to hand Czechoslovakia over to Hitler. German forces marched into the country with Hitler claiming that Germany was restoring order. Most of Czechoslovakia then came under German rule. Britain and France protested, but they did not directly oppose Hitler's takeover. However, the occupation caused the direction of British foreign policy to change. Hitler's takeover of the rest of Czechoslovakia marked the end of appeasement. When Hitler had demanded the Sudetenland, he could claim that he was bringing German-speaking people into Germany and reversing the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. However, he could not use this argument to justify taking the rest of Czechoslovakia. There was no large-scale German-speaking population demanding to join Germany. Hitler's occupation, therefore, showed that his ambitions went beyond simply uniting German-speaking people. It also proved to Chamberlain that Hitler could not be trusted, as he had broken the Munich Agreement. After the occupation of Czechoslovakia, Britain began to take a much stronger approach towards Hitler. Britain and France promised to help Poland if it was invaded. Britain also guaranteed the independence of Romania and Greece. War seemed so likely that conscription was introduced in Britain during peacetime. Meanwhile, Mussolini conquered Albania, and Hitler strengthened his alliance with Mussolini by signing the Pact of Steel. Hitler also withdrew Germany from the 1934 Non-Aggression Pact with Poland and from the Anglo-German Naval Agreement of 1935. Europe was once again moving towards war. In summary, the Munich Agreement was signed on the 30th of September 1938. Britain, France, Germany and Italy agreed that Germany could take control of the Sudetenland. Neither Czechoslovakia nor the Soviet Union was represented at the conference. The agreement prevented war in the short term, but it strengthened Hitler and seriously weakened Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia lost its defensive frontier, much of its heavy industry, and important resources. In March 1939, Hitler broke the Munich Agreement by taking control of the rest of Czechoslovakia. This convinced Chamberlain that Hitler could not be trusted and brought the policy of appeasement to an end.